In emergency preparedness discussions, everyday objects are often portrayed as potential survival tools. According to safety education materials and law enforcement guidance, certain tools can have legitimate uses in survival situations, but their legal status and safe handling are often misunderstood by the general public. In many cases, what people believe about quick survival hacks does not fully align with actual legal or safety frameworks. But here's the question. Do you think most people actually understand the legal difference between carrying a tool for safety versus carrying it in a way that could get them into legal trouble? Let me know your answer in the comments below. According to public safety guidelines and legal references in multiple jurisdictions, the legality of carrying or using certain tools depends heavily on intent, context, and local law enforcement interpretation. In some regions, carrying utility tools for occupational or emergency preparedness purposes may be permitted, while the same object used or carried in a different context may be treated differently under the law. This creates a complex legal landscape that many individuals are not fully aware of. According to law enforcement training materials, officers often assess several factors when determining whether a tool is being carried for legitimate use or potentially unlawful intent. These factors can include location, behavior, and surrounding circumstances. It is important to understand that laws vary significantly between regions, and what may be legal in one area may be restricted or regulated in another. From a legal standpoint, intent plays a key role in interpretation. One interpretation is that carrying a tool for occupational or emergency preparedness purposes may be considered lawful when properly justified. Another perspective raised in legal discussions is that misuse or threatening context can change the legal classification of an otherwise ordinary item. This is for informational purposes only and not legal advice. In emergency preparedness training, professionals often emphasize that survival is not dependent on any single object, but rather on knowledge, planning, and safe decision-making. For example, first aid training, evacuation awareness, and basic safety skills are consistently highlighted as more reliable factors in emergency survival than reliance on any specific tool. According to safety education frameworks, over-reliance on objects can sometimes create a false sense of preparedness. Instead, structured training and awareness are considered more effective for real-world emergencies. Another important aspect in legal discussions is public perception. In many documented cases, misunderstandings arise not from actual use, but from how an object is perceived in a given situation. This is why legal systems often evaluate context rather than just possession. As we continue this investigation, the focus will shift toward real legal frameworks, how authorities interpret emergency preparedness tools, and what people should actually understand before assuming anything about survival hacks seen online. Because in many cases, the biggest risk is not the object itself, but the misunderstanding around it. As we continue this investigation into how everyday tools are perceived in emergency situations, it becomes important to examine how real-world legal interpretations have handled similar misunderstandings. Because according to public legal records and law enforcement guidance summaries, many cases involving innocent intent objects turning into legal disputes do not begin with an action, but with context and perception. In several documented legal analyses across jurisdictions, authorities consistently emphasize that the same object can be interpreted differently depending on where, how, and under what circumstances it is carried or used. This creates what legal experts often refer to as a context-dependent classification system. In simple terms, an item is not always judged only by what it is, but by how it is being presented in a situation. According to law enforcement training frameworks, officers are typically instructed to evaluate intent through observable factors. These may include behavior patterns, location, time, and surrounding environment. From one interpretation, this system is designed to ensure public safety by preventing misuse of tools that could be dangerous in certain contexts. Another perspective raised in legal discussions suggests that such subjective interpretation can sometimes lead to misunderstandings if context is not fully clear. This is for informational purposes only and not legal advice. In public safety education materials, there is a consistent emphasis on the importance of clarity when carrying or using any object in emergency preparedness scenarios. For example, individuals engaged in occupational work or survival training are often encouraged to understand local regulations before carrying specialized equipment. This reduces the likelihood of confusion during routine interactions with authorities. However, according to behavioral safety studies, Most individuals do not actively research legal boundaries of emergency tools until after an incident or misunderstanding occurs. This gap between awareness and regulation is one of the key reasons why DIY survival hacks circulating online can sometimes create confusion when interpreted outside their intended educational context. Another important factor in legal interpretation is proportionality. According to legal doctrine in many systems, the assessment of a situation often includes whether the perceived risk or response is proportionate to the context in which an object is present. This means that identical items may be viewed differently depending on how they are presented and the surrounding circumstances. From a safety perspective, this reinforces a broader principle. Preparedness should not only focus on tools, but also on understanding how those tools are viewed within legal frameworks. In several documented public safety campaigns, authorities emphasize that knowledge of laws is as important as physical preparedness itself. This includes awareness of what is considered acceptable in public spaces versus what may require specific justification or professional context. One interpretation of these guidelines is that legal systems aim to balance individual preparedness with collective safety. Another perspective suggests that lack of public awareness about these distinctions can lead to unintended legal consequences, even without malicious intent. According to emergency preparedness research, there is also a psychological factor involved in how people respond to survival hacks online. Individuals tend to gravitate towards simple, visual, or easily repeatable ideas. This makes short-form survival tips highly engaging, but not always fully contextualized. When these ideas are removed from their original safety or legal context, they can be misunderstood or misapplied. This is particularly relevant in situations involving tools that may have dual-use characteristics, meaning they can serve both harmless and potentially harmful functions depending on context. Because of this, legal systems often rely heavily on situational interpretation rather than object classification alone. As we continue this analysis, it becomes clear that the central issue is not simply about tools or objects. It is about understanding boundaries. Boundaries between preparedness and misuse, between legality and perception, and between intention and interpretation. In the next section, we will examine how emergency preparedness actually works in regulated environments, what safety professionals recommend instead of DIY hacks, and how individuals can prepare for emergencies without entering legal gray areas. Because in real-world situations, awareness is often more important than improvisation, and misunderstanding can sometimes create consequences that were never intended. As we reach the final section of this investigation, the focus shifts away from misconceptions and toward what official safety and emergency preparedness frameworks actually recommend when it comes to real-world survival situations. Because according to public safety agencies, emergency management guidelines, and occupational safety standards, effective preparedness is not built around improvised hacks, but around planning, training, and legally compliant tools and knowledge. In most structured emergency preparedness systems, the emphasis is placed on three core principles: situational awareness, resource management, and safe decision-making under pressure. These principles are designed to work across a wide range of scenarios, including natural disasters, accidents, and unexpected disruptions where immediate assistance may not be available. From a safety education perspective, one of the most important findings is that individuals who prepare in advance tend to respond more effectively during emergencies compared to those who rely on improvisation in the moment. This does not mean improvisation has no role. Instead, it highlights that improvisation is more effective when built on prior knowledge rather than panic-driven decision-making. According to emergency preparedness literature, structured kits and legally compliant tools are designed to reduce uncertainty in crisis situations. These may include basic medical supplies, communication devices, lighting tools, and other non-restricted safety equipment depending on regional laws. However, what is consistently emphasized across safety guidelines is that tools alone do not determine survival outcomes. Training and awareness play an equal, if not greater, role. In real-world emergency response scenarios, professionals are trained to assess situations rapidly, prioritize safety, and use standardized procedures rather than improvisation. This structured approach reduces risk and improves coordination during critical incidents. From one perspective, this demonstrates the importance of regulated training systems in ensuring consistent responses during emergencies. From another perspective, it highlights the limitations of relying solely on online DIY survival content that may not include legal or situational context. This is for informational purposes only and not legal or safety advice. Another key point in official preparedness education is the importance of legality in planning. According to public safety frameworks, individuals are encouraged to ensure that any equipment or preparedness method they adopt is compliant with local laws and regulations. This reduces the risk of misunderstandings and ensures that preparedness efforts remain within lawful boundaries. In many jurisdictions, laws surrounding tools and emergency equipment are designed to balance individual safety with public security considerations. This means that context, intent, and usage environment all matter when determining legality. One interpretation of this approach is that it provides flexibility for legitimate preparedness while maintaining safeguards against misuse. Another perspective raised in policy discussions is that clearer public education about these boundaries could reduce confusion and improve overall safety awareness. As we step back and evaluate the broader theme of this investigation, a pattern becomes clear. Many viral survival hacks gain attention because they appear simple, practical, and immediately useful. However, when examined through the lens of legal and safety frameworks, these ideas often require more context than what is presented in short-form content. This gap between simplified content and real-world application is where misunderstandings can occur. According to communication research and public safety education, oversimplified survival advice can sometimes lead audiences to underestimate legal, environmental, or situational complexities. That is why official guidance tends to focus less on shortcuts and more on principles: awareness, preparation, compliance, and responsible decision-making. These are the foundations of real-world emergency readiness. As we bring this investigation to a close, the central conclusion becomes clear. Survival is not defined by improvised tricks or viral techniques. It is defined by preparation, understanding, and the ability to respond safely within legal and practical boundaries. Because in real emergencies, the most effective advantage is not improvisation under pressure. It is having knowledge before pressure ever begins. So when we look at everything together, the legal frameworks, safety guidelines, and real-world emergency practices, one thing becomes clear. Preparedness is not about finding shortcuts. It is about understanding what is safe, what is legal, and what actually works when it matters most. And often, the difference between confusion and control comes down to preparation done before the situation ever happens. Given all the facts, do you think most people rely too much on viral DIY survival hacks instead of learning real safety and legal preparedness skills? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this investigation helpful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss the next deep dive breakdown. Also, let me know in the comments what topic you want next. Your idea might become the next full investigative video. Thanks for watching. Stay aware, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next one.